Hey, I hope everybody had an amazing Memorial Day weekend. I know I did. Me, my brother, and my dad, we rode our motorcycles all the way out to Ohio for two of the parties out there. So in today's episode, I spoke with Deputy Chief of Bargersville, Mike Pruitt. Had a fantastic conversation. Mike's been in the fire service for 38 years, and he's spent his whole entire life here in Johnson County. He also worked out at Wayne Township as well. So we talk about bringing different policies and procedures from other departments into your own department. Also what he does with the Indy 500 as well. So stick around, listen to this. It's a pretty short episode. I really enjoyed talking with Mike. If you do enjoy this, please hit that like button, share this video with your friends, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Or if you have any questions for Mike, just put them down in the comments and I can kind of send them to him. I really hope that you guys enjoy this episode. Mike, thank you so much for coming on, buddy. I really do appreciate it.
No problem.
How was your drive here?
My drive here was awesome. It was a beautiful day out today, so nice drive. Short drive.
Good. Well, for everybody listening, thank you so much for listening on this episode. But this is our third attempt to try to record because the first time I couldn't get the audio to work properly. The second time my power went out to my house. And so now third time's the charm. So
I think your neighbors thought you had a new roommate. I've been here so many times in and out. So
well, I felt bad last time I told you I was going to buy you a tank of gas. It's like
right.
Today's economic forum here.
Yeah, no kidding.
So, well, awesome. Well, again, thank you for coming on, taking the time out of your day. It's Memorial Day, so thank you for that. So let's go ahead and talk about where are you from and where did you grow up and then where you're at today.
So born and raised in Johnson County. Grew up in the Bargersville area. Went to Franklin High School, graduated from Franklin High School. Once I got out of high school, grew up on the farmed with my dad, then joined the military, went into the Navy, did my 4 years in the Navy.
Thank you for your service.
During Desert Shield, Desert Storm, did all that business, came back home, got out, went to work for farm machinery companies selling farm machinery, but I was also at the time a volunteer firefighter. And started doing my volunteer firefighting and kind of a side gig. It really wasn't one of those things where I was on because I thought I was going to make a career out of it. It was more just something I enjoyed doing. Then as time went on, I got hired by the City of Franklin Fire Department. That's where I started my career there in 1991. 93. I got to think back, guys. So 93, I started with City of Franklin Fire Department. And so I was there for 7 years and then transferred to Wayne Township when they became a career department and did 20 years there, retired with 27 in the pension, and got hired at Bargersville as a deputy fire chief once I left there. But I was with Bargersville all these years, so total altogether about 30, I think I'm around 37, 38 years in the fire service now. So it's been pretty much my life, and then there's been a multitude of different involvements that have branched off of that, whether it was being involved in FEMA USAR task forces. I mean, it just lots of things were born out of my time in the fire service. But I've been very lucky throughout my career. I have a son who is also on the job. He's on the job at Wayne Township going into his third year there, so very proud of him. And he that's what he wanted to do all along through his whole life. He kind of grew up around the firehouse. And so I now live in Bargersville with my wife, Angela, who's a respiratory therapist at Riley Hospital. And we're involved in just a little bit about everything. And I'm getting older, really old.
I was going to say, how old are you?
So I'm 56.
You're 56?
Yeah. I'm old enough now that I have people that ask the question, now, when were you on a fire truck? Yeah, so you're getting old when people can't remember, unless it's, people the same age as you, remember you being in, fighting fires and in the companies. But that kind of hits you hard when somebody says, you were on a fire truck? Yes, I was at one point.
So how long have you been off a truck?
So I went off the truck at Wayne Township. I was on the ladder there for most of my career. And then I came off I think it was about my last 5 or 6 years at Wayne Township. I came into admin, and I was came in the first time. I did 2 stints in admin, 5 years. Came in first as the special operations chief and the public information officer, and then went back for a short time, back to the ladder truck, then came back again and was just the public information officer. And so I finished up there being the PIO.
I do have a question. I do see a lot of your PIO stuff. You're always on the news with something. So like, I'm always just like, man, god dang, how does he get on the news so much? Like, you do a great job with that. You do a great job with posting pictures and videos and information. Like, I really do enjoy that aspect of what you do on that.
I'm a news junkie, and I love promoting what we do in the fire service. I mean, I love talking about what we do. A lot of people might call me a media whore or something like that, but and I understand why they would say that. But I've always been big on pitching what we do, to help people understand what we do. And so I've always enjoyed that. So as far as public information officer, I did that at the city of Franklin. So I started back then when the fire chief had me handle the media request on the side back then. I did it at Bargersville and at Wayne Township. I've done it in FEMA and then gone out west for the wildland fires, which I'm still involved in that, going out working as a public information officer out west during wildfires. So I have a passion for telling our story, however it might be, on whatever front it is. And so just to help the general public understand what we do, because everybody watches things on TV or they've made their own perception of what we do, and it's usually incorrect. And so I just like to educate about what we do.
So to kind of go in a little bit more of the media stuff, what is your opinion, not the policies of your department, but your opinion of firefighters posting pictures, videos of stuff other than the obvious patient information, going on call and posting, whatever vehicle accident you're on? What's your opinion on that, guys? Just posting videos from around the firehouse, kind of razzing each other a little bit, as long as it's not going way overboard.
Right.
But what's your opinion on that?
We've seen what happens when things go bad on social media. Firefighters will post something that they thought might be harmless. They didn't think about it before they posted it. And we're always a representation of the fire department, no matter what we post, whether it's fire department related or non-fire department related. As long as that media on that profile of your Facebook page and it says, I'm a firefighter with Bargersville or Greenwood or whoever, people tie that back to your agency. So having a social media policy is very important, and educating everyone on the department. Now, one of the things that at Wayne Township, I didn't go around and play social media police, but tried to get the message out to the guys like, hey, this is what you can post and what you cannot post when talking about department related. So I didn't mind them posting photos from around the firehouse as long as they were good natured, and obviously somebody's going to complain no matter what you do.
You'll always have that person who's offended.
They're always going to weigh in, and they're just going to be on the attack all the time no matter what you post. But if you're using good judgment in what you're posting, and I always ask them, hey, if you got any question to whether it's in good judgment or not or good taste, send it to me first. I'll say, yeah, you can post that on your personal page, your Twitter, your Facebook, whatever you want, TikTok, or whatever you want to do. I don't have a problem with that as long as it's in good taste. There have been times that I've had to call and say, hey, dude, you got to take that down, or yeah, I know that that's your opinion on it, but you can't express that like that, or not in that way. And so
you have to find a better way of expressing.
Yes. I was not someone who just went to bring the hammer down on people, because I want them to talk about what they do too. Your personal page, you want to talk about, a run you had, and everybody did a great job. One of the things that I always warn fire departments about is that when we post things like, boy, it's a great fire, and that translates into some people's minds as, why is that great? People just lost everything they owned. And you're saying, boy, it's a great fire. Here's a group photo of all of us standing out in front of the fire, hugging each other. And, we got our arms around each other. But we got to stop and think about, I understand that what we're talking about is it was a great fire because that's what we trained to do. We go in, we put the fire out, we did a great job, everybody worked together. But what it translates into is, this was a great day for our fire department. And that's not the message you want to get across. And that's what I always warn fire departments about a lot of times when I'm training other public information officers, is like, be very careful with those group shots. I can remember back in Wayne Township, when I first started there were a couple fires we had, and the guys were outside and back then there were a lot more smokers on the fire department, and so they'd be standing outside smoking a cigarette in front of a house that just burnt down due to careless smoking. And I can remember, us getting some negative feedback on that. It was kind of an eye-opener. It's like, yeah, you're probably right on that. We're not really sending the message we want to send there. So you just have to be very careful with some of the things like that and what the public perception is, even though we understand it. Our adrenaline was pumping. We went in. We did a great job stopping the fire. This is our group shot. We want it from memories of our guys out there on the job, but let's do it in the right place, right time, under the right circumstances.
It's kind of a good point to bring up because I've even realized recently I've made some posts that one of them I was asked to take down, so I took it down. It was a hilarious post.
Yeah.
It was good. But you guys have a job in your administrative side, and you guys are trying to play like kind of a little bit of a damage control, and you're just trying to kind of keep the heat off of you, which I get it and I understand. But on the younger guy side, it's always you hear the stories about back in the day what guys used to do to with each other and stuff like that,
Oh, yeah.
razz and giving each other shit, and you're like, man, I want to be a part of that. So then you jump into it, then you get your pee smacked, and you're just like, well, I thought I could do that, and then you can't do it as much as what they used to do back in the day.
Yeah.
So it gets kind of tough and gets difficult to want to kind of push that stuff out there, but I do understand. I do understand that there's the importance of creating the public image for the department. I do understand that. But it's also awesome that you're trying to get the information out to the public because a lot of people, they think it's just another episode of Chicago Fire.
Yeah.
And then I've had friends ask, like, so what's it like living in a firehouse? Is it just like in the show, like TV shows? I'm like, no, not even close.
Yeah.
Not even close. So
Firehouse life, when I came in over 30-some years ago, working in the fire service, I mean, we had our good times, and sometimes those good times were a little bit extreme sometimes. And what I'm talking about, the pranks and the things are, messing with each other in the firehouse. And today, cultures have changed. There's a little bit, people are a little bit more sensitive to some things that we used to do that you just can't do in the firehouse anymore. And not to say that we don't have a good time. We find our ways to, when you're in the firehouse with each other for 24 hours, guys and gals are going to they're going to still prank each other now and then or have some fun with each other. And, that is one of the things that I always will go on in the firehouse is having a good time, but we have to do it. Our good time has to be in a certain, I don't know, it can't be the same good times they had 40, 50 years ago. It's just not acceptable these days. And for good reason in some cases. I mean,
yes, I do have a question on that. And this is a thought that it's been kind of brewing in my head. Do you think the reason why a lot of this stuff has changed is because this is going to sound bad, the range of inclusivity that departments have to go through to get all different kinds of people to get them hired on, instead of you look back in the day, you look at the pictures of the guys back in, from the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, all the way up to the 70s and 80s. These dudes look hardcore. Most guys they came out of the military. Most of the men did serve in the military. So it was just a completely different mindset of what is expected versus today where most everybody on the department probably never served. And most everybody in the department's never really gone through anything really, really tough. I would say most, not saying all. But also the range of different types of people. I'm not saying it should be one type of person. I mean, I'm talking type A personality is what you want. But I'm not talking race. I'm not talking gender. I'm just talking about the wide range of people. Because, even for me, I was barely experienced in life when I first got hired on. Right. So then I'm going to come on and then I get razzed and stuff like that. Then I'm going to get butthurt about it and I'm going to cry because I never really had anything hard growing up. I've had a pretty easy life.
Yeah.
So, that's something that's been in my mind running around. A lot of this has changed because it's just more soft. And it sounds bad saying that, but we've never really had anything hard really happen to my generation. Yeah. And I'm not talking about the terrorist attacks like 9/11 or anything, because that is extremely difficult and that is terrifying. But in my area, for me, for our generation, never really generationally growing up, never had any tough time. No war that we've had to have been drafted to go fight. So that's a big reason why I think there's a huge difference from back in the day with those guys retiring, getting out, to the newer generations coming in. But that's just my thought.
No,
what do you think?
I truly believe that. I mean, you look way back in history, and who filled firefighter spots years ago? Basically, criminals, people like that were the only people that could get to go out and do this type of work. So we've progressed a long ways, but we came along and we were a paramilitary organization. And, being paramilitary, if you've never been in the military, you really don't understand what military is about, And so that was, but as we've gone on through generations in the fire service, and I've witnessed it, there's a change. There's a change in culture. And as leaders in the fire service, we have to adapt to that. There's still a lot of old school in me that, when somebody messes up on a run at the firehouse, I tend to light them up. And that's not a leadership style that is really promoted a lot these days, as far as just hammering them and just tearing them down right there when they made the mistake. And so I've transitioned from some of that into taking a little bit more tactful approach, just with a newer generation of firefighters. And there's a way to get to your end point without having to throttle somebody. Now, not to say that I'm not going to still, because that's just kind of my style sometimes. And you can ask any of the guys that I work around, especially at Bargersville. I've gotten feedback before from them, asking me, why are you such an asshole? And so it's sort of like just how I was brought up in the fire service. I didn't, when I messed up, it was nothing for the officer to come and give me the beans about it right there in front of my crew. And so as we move forward in a different generation, different way of thinking, a different way of leadership, as officers, we have to adapt a little bit and change. It doesn't mean we have to give up our old style completely, because I'm not going to do that. But I do believe that there are new ways to, approach issues within the firehouse, issues with an individual, and tactfully do this. Now, if we go through the process and this progressive discipline or corrective action, and we don't get the results we need, now we're going to change the system. We're going to change how we're going to approach the individual to get it through their head that I want this change to happen. This has to happen. So it's a lot different than when I first came in. But if you don't change a little bit as a fire officer today, especially if you're an older fire officer, you're going to fail. It's just a reality of it. You got to find new ways, new tactful ways to deal with a new generation of kids coming into the job.
What are some of those new tactical ways that you've noticed that have worked for the younger generation?
Well, one is that setting an example first, because, they still look for leadership. They still look for, they're still looking for the guy. They want to see you doing the same thing that you're telling them to do. So I think it's very important that you have to set that example first. You can't be an officer that tells people, hey, that's BS and you need to be doing this and you're doing it wrong, when the officer's not really doing it, or nor has he ever done it. But because he put the badge on now, he is the expert in that field. And so I think you have to set that example first. I think it's one-on-one conversations, not necessarily, pulling them out in front of the group and belittling someone in front of the group on the mistake they made. We all give each other the beans about, when we do mess up. It's kind of humorous, but in a lot of ways, that can be hard on somebody to do that in front of the group. Now, if we sit down and we go through that in the step and what our corrective action is going to be, and because they may not understand, have they been taught the right way to do something? If they've never been taught, it's like somebody brought up to me the other day at a firefighter's funeral, they called for the hand salute. Guess what? A large number of the guys that were newer to the department had never been in the military, had never been trained on how to hand salute. And so when you look down the line at the hand salutes, it was a mess. So everybody assumed that, hey, you put the uniform on you, the firefighter, you understand how to do a hand salute. And so we can't assume that everybody understands how to do something. So we got to make sure they were trained properly to do it in the first place before we go out and try to do this corrective action. And so that's just always the first steps. It's just slowing the process down, working with individuals and they're, I'm in a deputy chief's position, so it may be me, the battalion chief, and their officer that are working together for this corrective action. It may be a battalion chief. It may be a lieutenant or a captain I'm working with. But it's just more one-on-one, more personalized type of corrective action, conversations, bringing it down to earth. just to make sure that they totally understand what you're trying to get them to do. So I in my 20 years at Wayne Township as an officer up there, I never wrote anyone up in all those years because I was able to sit down with individuals in my office and just talk about the problem. And we fixed the problem. So I always had a lot of success with that. There's a lot of people out there that just want to hang paperwork left and right. Mm-hmm. They think they get the gold badge on or the officer badge, and immediately they're like, oh, I got to start writing people up. And that's just the wrong approach on that. You just can't handle that. So it's a new generation, new time, but you got to adapt or you're going to fail as an officer.
With you having experience at Wayne Township and then also at Bargersville, do you pull anything from, with you being deputy chief at Bargersville, do you pull anything from Wayne to Bargersville, like mix and match a little bit of each of the departments? And then do you pull from other departments? And if so, what do you pull from most of those departments and who do you pull from?
So I pull a lot from Wayne Township. And one of the benefits of being at Wayne Township was we were a smaller agency in a major city. So we had the ability to walk in and see the chief anytime, smallest agency. Mm-hmm. If we had an idea that we wanted for the department, we could take it into the admin and share it with them, and like we could get quick results. You get into bigger agencies than that, sometimes there's more layers of bureaucracy, but you still get those big city runs, you get the variety of runs. And so I think once I went up there and I experienced that, and I experienced being in a little bit larger department, when I came back to Bargersville, that experience that I had up there helped me, come back and teach. The good thing was I'd been at Bargersville all my life, pretty much. So I knew what I was getting back into. And so to bring some of those city concepts or the bigger urban area concepts back to Bargersville, that was something that I benefited from, bringing that back. And that can have been from leadership, tactics, or SOGs, how we do things in the department. I think that was a major help because I got exposed to that to come back. So sometimes a problem down at Bargersville, based on my history of problems that I may have run into in my career at Wayne Township, were not as big a deal because I knew how to deal with them in that bigger department. And coming back here to a smaller department, it was easier to work through those and gave me that experience.
Do you think that guys would see it being a problem because they'll sit there and think, well, this is Wayne Township. You don't bring Bargersville stuff up here, or this is Bargersville. Let's use other departments as well. Let's talk about Greenwood and let's talk about White River. Well, that's a White River thing. Don't bring it here to Greenwood. Yeah. And do you think that a lot of the guys at either of the departments will give you a lot of the shit that you really don't need to be hearing from them because it's like, well, this is not what Bargersville does, or this is not what Wayne Township does. Like, you better learn our way.
Everywhere I've been, we've heard that. I've heard that. Because it's hard to sit at the table at Bargersville and not go, well, one day at band camp or one day at Wayne Township, we did this. It's like, I think the guys they're like, oh God, here comes another Wayne Township story, or we did this at Wayne Township. And it's hard because that was 20 years of my life and my experience came from there. Or when I was at the city of Franklin, we did this. So, and it goes vice versa. If you were Wayne Township and you mentioned something about Bargersville, well, Bargersville's this little bitty department in Johnson County. What the hell they know about coming up here and giving an idea? But what I remind everybody is that none of us came up with the original idea of anything. I mean, Greenwood, Bargersville, Wayne Township, Indianapolis, somebody came up with the idea of the fire engine. It's like, somebody brought it up. And so I always encourage guys, like, hey, if you know of another way or another department that's doing something and you bring it up tactfully. Bring it up as, have all your information together. Don't just go, it's something you saw and go and have no information on why it's being done. But I think that's how we grow as a fire service, is we got to share ideas. I mean, Bargersville just didn't one day go, boy, EMS. We're going to bring EMS. Oh, that's a big city thing. We're not bringing EMS. Well, guess what? We do EMS. Somebody else gave us the idea. Somebody else gave us the idea on what kind of nozzles to carry. Somebody else gave us the idea of hose. We pick up Firehouse Magazine all the time or any of those publications and we see ideas. And it may not have another fire department's name on it, but we'll go, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. But if you'd attached, say, White River Township Fire Department to that story, they'd be like, oh, that's a White River thing. Well, you can't do that. You got to look at the new ideas or you're going to get stale really quick, and there are a lot of great ideas. Now, it still comes down to pulling the hose off the truck, getting water in the hose, making the stretch, because everything gets better when the fire goes out. Harry Tibbetts would always preach that to us when he was our training guy at Wayne Township. The water goes on the fire, everything gets better. So still today, when you go on and you see the videos of guys stretching line and they're screwing it up, or it's taking forever to get that line off and get water on the fire, we still have a basics problem. If you can come up with ways to train guys that other departments are using, jump on it, man. Bring it in. And yeah, you're going to catch some flack. And some ideas are crazy as hell that you bring in there and you go, well, we were doing that 20 years ago, and now this is the new idea again, to come around and do that, whether it's fog, whether it's smooth bore. I mean, the argument goes on. But if you don't get any water come out of the nozzle, it doesn't matter. But no, I think, guys got to, that's how we get new ideas. You got to bring them in from other departments. And it just can't always be a White River or an IFD or a Bargersville or a Wayne Township thing.
Because you said it perfectly. Because if you don't do that and you don't listen to everybody else, you get stale and you get left behind. And then you're that department that was awesome back 10, 15 years ago. But no, you're no longer that department. No. There's departments out there that I know of that back in the day, they were the biz. They were the best. But they got stuck in that way because this is our way.
Yeah.
I don't agree with that because there's so many other people out there that like getting to talk with people from out of state, like when FDIC comes in, listening to what they do every day for training and seeing the stuff they post on Instagram and stuff like that. It's there's just so many different ways of doing stuff. And then we switched our crosslays to Minuteman. Now there's people around us that do the Minuteman, and it's so much better than the stupid Z-load. But there's departments out there that do the Z-load.
Well, and we had the Z-load at Wayne Township. We had the Z-load at Bargersville, and we had the arguments and we had the conversations on the best load. And if you know how to use a Z-load,
yes,
you're good.
Yeah.
If you know how to use a Minuteman, you're good. The problem is, I don't care what hose we use or hose load we use, but you better be able to stretch it.
Yes.
And so, so we went to the Minuteman load at Bargersville not long ago. It was basically put it out there. First, I was a little hesitant to change because you have you have people that come and go as your part-time staff. And so having to retrain them all the time on how to do things. And everybody's like, well, it's just a bitch to load the Z-load back in. Well, I don't care how long it takes you to put the hose back on the truck. I just care about how long it takes to get it off. So after a lot of conversation, and they threatened to hang me, that I wouldn't wake up the next morning, things like that, I decided it was best that maybe we should try the Minuteman, which I was okay with. And they train a lot on it, and they've gotten good at it. So I don't care. As long as you can pull the hose off the truck and put the fire out, that's all I need. I don't need a jumbled mess next to no matter what hose load it is. That's embarrassing.
Oh my gosh.
For that to happen.
And for an engineer, it's annoying.
Oh, it is.
You look over and there's a spaghetti mess right next to you.
It is. It's a mess. And, I always, whenever we do training, I wish that I could take a syringe full of adrenaline and jam it in everybody's chest during training to give them that feeling that they get when they're pulling up on that working fire.
Yeah.
And, your blood's pumping and you're just kind of you're trying to get your mind together. Just so we could recreate that muscle memory, what it feels like.
You get that extra strength too.
Yes, that extra strength.
I mean, what you can do is get your department on testosterone, which you could do that, which I highly recommend. I highly recommend. Doctor prescribed,
is this a commercial?
Obviously. This is a commercial for testosterone. If you have low T, go ahead and talk to your doctor, get your levels checked, and then get put on that shit because it is amazing.
No, lots of good conversation. And as a leader in the department, when you have guys that have, they want to have a lot of conversation about that. One thing that I've learned, especially since I come back to Bargersville, is being in that deputy chief spot. I got to listen to the guys and start, hey, all right, if you want to do this, then we'll do it. And, if it works, great. I'm glad that we figured this one out. So
do you have that open door policy?
Oh, absolutely.
Have you noticed any issues with chain of command with that open door policy? And if somebody does come to you about something that, hey, this needs to be discussed with your officer or your battalion chief before it comes to me, have you noticed a lot of that happening, or do guys mostly understand that?
I think guys understand it. I think it's just real easy in a smaller department. Guys walking down the hallway, doors open, they pitch something out to me or they ask me a question about something, and I'm perfectly okay with that. Now, if it's something, it's a complaint, then we're going to back up a little bit and, hey, send it to your officer, bring it to the battalion chief, and then if they can't resolve it, because the worst thing I hate to hear is when the battalion chief or the officer comes to me and goes, I didn't know anything about that. They didn't say anything about it. So I think chain of command is still very important. But, if you have something that you don't feel like you can talk to your officer about, the battalion chief about, then, my door's open. We're going to talk. We'll start back at the beginning if I feel like it needs to go back down to the officer level.
Do you think that this is something that I've always kind of wondered ever since I've been working? Do you think that the chief should be somebody like a friend to the department, or do you think he should be something more of an administrative aspect for the department? Meaning, I'm your boss. I'm going to do what's best for you, but I ain't your friend because I'm going to tell you things that you're not going to like. Yeah, what is your opinion on that?
That's always a tough one, especially as you get promoted through the ranks, and because when you're down in the ranks with the guys on the apparatus and you're working on the firehouse and you're all buddies and you're friends, and then you get promoted and that separation starts, it can be pretty tough for some guys to work through that. But I think that you can be friends. I don't think you totally just, if you get promoted to chief, I don't think you got to shut people out, because I think you got to remember where you came from. And, you always hear, people talk about a firefighter's chief, that I think there's a place for that where you can be down to earth with your people and still be their friends, but you have to lay the expectations out. Listen, I'm charged with this job of being the chief of the department now. I'm going to have to make some tough decisions, and some of those decisions may not be popular with everybody, but, always do the best job you can to make sure that, you're not doing self-serving things as the chief. All of a sudden now you're chief and you go into the office and now you're just serving more of yourself than you are the guys down the ranks, whether it's your battalion chiefs, your captains, lieutenants, whatever. So I think as long as you go up there and you're still spending every hour doing everything you can for the guys down below, that friendship can go on, but there has to be a clear understanding that, hey, I've got a job to do up here and it's not going to be popular sometimes. And nobody really, I always tell everybody when they come on the fire department, you get to spend a couple of years in the companies, then you have to be assigned to headquarters and work in admin for at least 1 to 2 years. Maybe 1 year is just enough, because I remember guys that would come in on light duty at Wayne Township was up there for like a week or a month, and they were like, this is nuts. This is crazy, because you spend all your time doing things that are fire department. I won't say not fire department related, but things that you waste. You get sucked into all these black holes working on things, and you don't get to progress the department like you're wanting to, because you're getting sucked into these black holes, whether they're personnel issues, political issues. And so I think everybody should come into admin and have to spend so much time in admin, because once you've been an admin and you go back to the companies, you're never the same. Because when guys are complaining in the companies about something and you're sitting there at the table, you know why something didn't happen. You know what the reasons are, and you just can't join in the conversation. If you open up your mouth and you say, well, now this is the reason why, and they immediately you're ostracized from the group. So that can be a tough situation when you've seen the dark side.
Yes.
And then you go back.
I disagree. I'll sit here and say I don't want to go into the prison, which is known as administration. I did my stint. I always say I did my dime in admin after I had something happen. So then I had to sit in there for a month and a half. And oh my gosh. I mean, but also I'm very politically involved locally and also in the county. I love to pay attention to what's going on and ask a ton of questions. So I do have an understanding a little bit of what is going on and why decisions are made the way they are. Do you think as a chief, for you, and maybe some other people that you do know of, is that you want that checks and balance from the firemen saying like, dude, you need to remember where you came from. Like, what in the fuck are you thinking? Like, would you want that as a deputy chief or as a fire chief at some point, to have some guys come to you? Could it be anybody? Does it have to be a certain person? Does it have to be a battalion that you would rather have come and tell you that? Or could it be a black helmet that's just like, hey, between you and me? Like,
yeah. So there are a lot of guys, especially at Bargersville, there are a lot of guys that I grew up with. I mean, when I look at the battalion chiefs, 2 out of the 3 battalion chiefs I've spent most of my life around, from growing up in the community, farming, all that. And so we've known each other for years. And we know each other in the insides and outs of our personalities and who we are. And they come to me, and those at least 2 of the 3 aren't afraid to give me their opinion on something when maybe they want to see something done different or they don't necessarily agree. They're not rude about it. They're not mean about it. They just bring it to my attention. And there's nothing harder than being in the position and somebody coming into you and telling you, go, dude, you got to chill out. You got, I don't know what's bothering you in your life right now. You got problems. I'm like, I don't have any problems in my life. We don't. And so it's hard to just take a deep breath and take that constructive criticism sometimes. Now, sometimes the criticism is just not, it's where they just don't have the information, and I made a decision on something and I didn't do a good job of communicating that. And I'll be the first one when I'm wrong, I'll admit that I'm wrong. It might take me a couple days, I'll admit, or a week, but I will admit I'm wrong. And I'll try to make that correction, and sometimes I'll have success at it and sometimes I won't. But growing up around those guys, we kind of understand each other. But I did it's probably one of the most dangerous things you can do as a chief is put out a survey.
Oh God.
And some chiefs have great success with it, some don't. I put out a survey after about 1.5 years as the deputy chief, and I got a lot of good feedback on things that were going good, and I got some stuff that I was like, wow, that's a punch right in the face. But instead of getting pissed about it, I had to stop and go, okay, why do they think that? And is it a true problem that I need to fix as the deputy chief? And so I actually took that as constructive criticism and worked with it. So surveys are dangerous, but they can be very effective. And I make an anonymous survey that I put out. Of course, you always have the guys that anonymous. It's not anonymous. You kidding me?
You're destined for fingerprints on the papers and everything.
But but it is what it is. But I do the surveys. And I'll probably do another one here in another 1.5 years to see how things are going. And a lot of times complaints come because I haven't done a good job of communicating to the troops why we're doing something. So that's something that I always constantly try to work on, is to just improve that so that they better understand what's going on in the department.
Are there things from an administrative point, from your spot, to the companies that they should or should not know about?
I would say that when it comes to things that they should know about, I think that's where we start dealing with personnel issues. I think if there's something going on with one of our firefighters or our EMS personnel in the department, not everybody needs to know that business. Especially if it's disciplinary, if it's health related, things like that. But everything else, we're pretty much an open book at Bargersville, and we try to keep everybody informed of what's going on. Sometimes we get busy and we don't get that done always, but there is some things that I think are just, could be something political that we're working on behind the scenes with local politicians, and we're just trying to keep it under wraps, because one of the things that you can do sometimes, you can start talking about something that's going to happen, and then it doesn't. And then it looks like egg on our face if we don't pull it off. Mm-hmm. So, I think that things like that, until we know we have solid information on something, maybe it's a pay raise. I mean, anytime you talk about a pay raise within the department, if it comes out of our mouths that we're looking at a 3 or 4 or 5, 6% pay raise, that's gospel, baby. And
That's
when
happening.
it doesn't happen, oh man, everybody's pissed as hell about it and want to know, well, you told us we were going to get 6%. Well, we didn't tell you we were going to get 6%. We just talked, we were trying. So I think there's some things like that until we solidify them and we know that we're going to for sure get those types of things for you, then we'll come out and talk about it.
The way I'll edit this is that you are getting a 6% raise.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
That way I'll be like, hey guys, you're getting a 6% raise.
So, I mean, all you got to do is walk in. I mean, our department's small enough still. I mean, all you got to do is walk into the kitchen table, drop some at the kitchen table, and it doesn't take long for it to circle around and make it to all the other personnel. And it changes, of course.
Yeah.
And that's not
It's
just
game
our
of telephone.
department. That's any department that happens. And so when that happens and you sat and you gave the right information and it just changed, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, people are going to change the story no matter what you say, but no.
So with you being deputy chief, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And then where do you see your department at in 5 years?
In 5 years, wow. Right now, probably, hopefully, still in the same position. I am extremely fortunate to have that deputy chief position at Bartersville Fire Department. And Chief Funkhauser, who I work with, he has been absolutely excellent to work with in our relationship because he pretty much handles all the administrative stuff on a day-to-day basis. And I handle pretty much the operations stuff. I don't try to mingle too much in his administrative stuff, which, to be honest with you, who would want to, right? It's like, but doing all the budgets and all the, just all the personnel stuff. And eventually we're going to grow out of that to where he's going to have to even have more help. But I get to handle all the operation stuff with the battalion chiefs on a daily basis. And so hopefully right where I'm at in there. And so I'm planning on maybe 10 years, and that'll put me at 65 and just hanging it all up. I say that, but I'll probably have to do something else. But I'd say 10 years and hitting 65. But 5 years, doing the same thing I'm doing right now. Our department is growing so much. I mean, the growth in our 71 square miles that we cover, it's hard to keep up with, but we're trying, and we're going to expand the department. We're going to expand the admin. And so in 5 years, I think there's going to be a lot of changes there within our agency. And I'm just planning on being right in the middle of it and helping that progress along.
So earlier you were talking about being at the Indy 500. I didn't ask earlier, what is it you do with the Indy 500? I saw a picture of you on Facebook wearing some uniform or whatever.
Yeah.
So what was it you were doing?
So at the Indianapolis 500, the Brickyard 400, I fill a position on the incident management team that oversees basically the operations off of the track. Okay, so the track has its own IMS operations, own safety. So everything that goes on off the track, spectator-wise, I'm the lead safety officer for the IMT, and then I have safety officers that work the ground. And so I've done that for several years. And so that is a huge undertaking for the whole incident management team to manage everything that goes on around that motor speedway during the race. So that's what I do as a safety officer up there in that position.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a little bit
Okay.
then. So what kind of training is it that you guys specifically try to hone in on? Is it more of like disaster, we talking about bombing, we talking about terrorist attack, we talking about shootings, we talking about collapses, like just all
hazards, baby.
all hazards.
It's everything. You gotta keep, like, our safety officers that we use are the guys I use are all safety officer trained, and so they all have the basics of incident safety. And so basically at the motor speedway, their job on the ground and my job in the pagoda is to, just like if we had a fire on the street, you're going to get an incident safety officer that's going to show up. So that's what my safety officers on the ground. If there's an incident with the motor speedway, fortunately, we haven't had any major incidents, knock on wood. It's just we always have the medical related issues that they just kind of observe and keep an eye on, make sure things don't get out of control. But as a group, we're prepared. We try to prepare ourselves for everything. And we work with a whole slew of partners in that incident management team for the motor speedway that come from all walks of government, everything from the federal side to state to local. So it takes the FAA, the Weather Service. We're all up there in this incident management team. So we're right there to help manage any major incidents that would happen when you bring 300,000 people into the Motor Speedway in one day, that's a busy day. You've just moved like the second largest city of the state into the Motor Speedway. Mm-hmm. And so you have to have the fire apparatus, you have to have EMS, you have to have that IMT that I'm a part of to run things and handle the emergencies that do occur, which majority of them are medical emergencies, mm-hmm. or somebody had a little bit too much to drink, got dehydrated. People get injured, mm-hmm. Just little bumps and bruises and things like that. And people have true medical emergencies out there also. So we manage that. But in the back of our minds, we're always prepared to manage a bigger event that would happen, an unfortunate event. And so, knock on wood, we've not had that. And I think a lot of it has to do with the good preparation that we do out there with all the response partners to make sure, whether it's law enforcement, the federal side of the agencies that are there, from the Department of Homeland Security, working together all the time, that helps make that place safe, or safer, let's put it that way.
Have you guys ever had any threats happen before the Indy 500 or the Brick Art?
Not that I know of. Not that I'm not privy to. That's mm-hmm. one of those things we talked about. There's certain information that you don't share with the firefighters. I don't know if there is or not. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have federal agencies there that deal with those types of things, but I've never personally dealt with any of those issues at the track.
All I would want is be able to borrow one of those earpieces. That way I can sit there and look around and talk like this all the time.
Make it look like
I'm doing something.
So, the earpieces are cool for about the first hour. And then after a while, you're just wanting to pull it out. So there's so much radio traffic going on, or it's starting to bother you because it's not something you wear all the time.
Yeah.
Like law enforcement guys, they wear them all the time. So they get the nice custom pieces, nice comfortable. Mine's a cheapo off of Amazon. And so after about a couple hours, it starts irritating my ear. I don't even want it in there. But no, it's a pretty amazing group that make that place go. And that's just our incident management team. There's a whole slew of personnel from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway side that run everything from the safety officers, the yellow shirts that we're all so familiar with. And those people, I mean, you talk about they put on their game face on race day. I mean, you're not going to get much past them. If you don't have the proper credentials, they're pretty good at their security job up mm-hmm. there. But, they live for that. They love doing that. Those yellow shirts get out. There's generations of yellow shirts from, fathers, grandfathers, sons, daughters that go out there and do that safety job out there. And they get a minimal amount of money and get paid to do that. But it's such a huge operation. This year we actually sent one of our engines up to help mm-hmm. At the track. Engine 202 went up and helped cover the track this year. And so my big thing with that was I wanted to expose our guys to large events, to work within that large event. And so just to give them a better understanding of how those large events work, which I think translates back in if you have a large event, whether it's a planned event or not mm-hmm. a planned event, you've been in that environment. You've been in the pit. You know what it's like. And so I think that's one of the things that my goal at Bartersville is to expose our guys to anything I can that would challenge them. Because I think that way when something happens, or God forbid something happens in our own community, they've got that muscle, they've got that picture in their mind of, gosh, oh yeah, I've been to large incidents before. We had lots of patients, and this was what was going on, and the radio traffic was crazy. It was just, it sounded like a total mess. But how to organize those things, how to pull it all together. We know we're not going to get control of things, and we know that at the track. I mean, we can control only so much, but when you have 300,000 people, and if something happens, you start putting your game into play. But it's going to take you a little while to get your feet underneath you. Mm-hmm. It's just hard to do. And so I like exposing our guys to those types of things so that they bring that back in our community and go, oh yeah, we had a bus accident with 20 people involved. Okay, well, 20 people, we can handle this. We just worked an event where there were 300,000 mm-hmm. people were being, taken to the hospital, treated. I mean, just triaged, everything. So I like exposing our people to those types of things.
What would be, so let's say an event happens, a chaotic event. Let's go with anything like more of a domestic terrorist type of event at the Indianapolis 500. What are the first thoughts that come through your mind if an event like that were to happen, let's say you're up in the pagoda, you hear it, and then you look over and you see it. What are your thoughts that are coming next?
My next thoughts is I got to make sure that my personnel that are on the ground are, one, that they're okay. All right. And then staying in my lane. So, I have safety officers. So unless I'm asked my opinion on something, staying in my lane, making sure that I'm taking care of my road of safety and deploying my safety officers to wherever they need to go. Taking a deep breath, because that's something that we all need to do, and making sure that I have the proper. Going to a check sheet helps me a lot of times. Okay, check marks. Okay, we got to make sure these things are happening in my lane of activity, and then assisting any of the other agencies or partners in the room that need assistance from my safety officers. So it's one of those things, until you get thrown into it. That's, it's like all these events that happen across our country, and we train for them, whether it would be the active shooters or anything like that. We train, which is good that we do that, but we really truly don't know how we're going to react until an event like that happens, and we hope that it never happens. But in that case, I'm just trying to stay in my lane and do my job, because there's so many other people that are handling so many other facets of what should be going on during an event like that. And so really, I'm not going to do anything. I got to stay in my lane. And that's where a lot of people have problems, to sit at that desk, to stay at that desk. It's like a battalion chief showing up on a fire. You're so tempted to get out of the vehicle and go walk around, but yet it's very important that you stay in place, in my opinion, in that buggy where you can hear what's going on, call for your more resources, track your resources, and so it gives you a better picture of the event. You get yourself right down in the middle of it, unless you absolutely feel like you have to, you're going to lose the 50,000-foot view of what's going on. And so that's what I'm a firm believer in, that I'm going to sit there and do my job as the safety and provide my officers to do what they need to do to support the response. So
I'll do one more question and then we'll end on that. But what would be something that you would like for the new generation, the next generation coming up, to know about the fire service?
Everybody always reads the book Pride and Ownership. And I don't care whether you volunteer, part-time, combination, career. You can tell a lot by a fire department when you walk in the door, whether people really give a shit about their agency, by how their trucks look, how their uniforms look, how they treat people. And I think this younger generation of firefighters coming in, like, this is different than the younger generation, because the generation that I had, we were just volunteers. We just wanted to respond on the calls, throw our blue light on top, and go race into the scene. Guys weren't looking like they didn't get on Greenwood or Barzo or White River as a stepping stone to get their career job, working on getting that experience. Back then we were just volunteering for our community. So it's changed a little bit. But what I'd tell these younger groups is go back to those traditions, stay with the traditions of the fire service, where we came from, always know where we came from, the history, how, there's so many things out there. A lot of people, they love buying the t-shirts, they love wearing the badge, but then they really don't practice the traditions. Now, some of our traditions need to be changed because they're outdated, they may be a little dangerous. But there's a lot of things like taking care of one another. And I think in today's fire service, I see a lot of guys not taking care of one another. We talk about family, but we don't put it into play. Excuse me there. That's all good. We talk about family, but we don't put it into play. And so we tend to be, we think about some guys just spend a lot too much time thinking about themselves or thinking about their business. Like probably, I don't mind guys coming to the firehouse and they have a business on the side, answering phone calls and doing some things. But I think sometimes their fire department job might end up being more like their part-time job. And they use it as that. And so they really don't take a lot of pride when they come into the firehouse of learning more, They're there. They come in, they do their 24, they earn their paycheck, and they leave. And not that they do a bad job, but they never really expand on making themselves better. So chase after the traditions. Take care of one another in the fire service. You know, when a guy's down in dumps, don't kick him. Help him back up. You know, guys go through all kinds of situations in the fire service and public safety in general. And sometimes, you know, you see guys struggling and they don't want to reach out because they don't want to get their balls busted by the other guys that they work with. And they're really struggling over it. And guys struggle with things different. So take care of one another. Just instead of going around trying to tear guys down, it's okay to give a guy some crap a little bit, but know when to stop and know when to, hey, we got to take care of it. And I do like to see, that's one of the things I love about Bargersville is the guys down there, they take care of each other. They take care of their apparatus. They have a lot of pride. And I like working in that environment. And continue to improve yourself, educate yourself, learn everything you can. Take it. There's so many facets of the fire department that branch out into other cool things in the fire service or in public safety. Take advantage of those moments. Work it out with your wife first, because, you know, if you end up spending your whole time in the fire service and not doing any family time, that can get you in a little trouble too. This is a voice of experience talking here. So you got to, you know, make sure you take care of your family too. But those are the big things that I want to see guys just continue to do, is take care of each other and have pride in the fire service.
That's awesome, Mike, sir. Chief, I appreciate you coming on and
thanks for
talking.
having me in.
Hopefully I can have you on again. Hey, we made it to the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching this. It really does mean a lot to me. So just hit that like button, leave a little comment, share this video with your friends and family, and also subscribe to the YouTube channel or whatever you're listening on. Hit that subscribe button, whether it's Spotify or Apple Play or Breaker Box, anything at all. I really hope that you guys have a blessed weekend. Thank you.